Hosted by a former statistics professor. This is your host, Professor Sides. With me, as always, for college football, Cousin Jared. We are here for week 13. We're almost to the end of the season, Cousin Jared. It feels like every year flies by. I don't know how it happens. Catches every time.
Yeah. Every year, faster and faster at that.
Week 12 is in the books, and it was really more of the same. Again, one of the weirder seasons we've had, just very ho-hum. A grades, slightly down, but still profitable for the season. The honor roll picks. Folks, if you are with us on the honor roll, we only had 6 extra picks that we didn't give out on the show last week. This week, I think we've got, 21 extra picks.
A lot. Yeah, it's a lot.
I mean, it's a lot. Like, there was a lot that we liked this week. So, folks, the honor roll picks, positive for the season. And we're looking to go out with a bang here as we wrap up the season. We have a lot that we like this week, and we aren't going to be able to, unfortunately, talk about all of them. Cousin Jared, real quick, as a reminder for people here right off the bat, you'll hear me reference Sideline. That is the name of the models that I built for various sports starting in 2020. They are player-based, so every number reflects today's roster. That matters because apparently very subpar quarterbacks decide to leave their team when they could still win the conference to go prepare for the draft. Not naming names. No insults. Again, these players are all better than we are, infinitely better than we are at college football. Probably better at college football than we are at anything we do. But
probably. Yeah.
Just, player-based roster matters. Higher player grades imply more points. The average 100. Grades are based on the probabilistic edge at the time of post. You'll see A grades and B grades. A grades are things the model loves. B grades are the things the model likes. And folks, it is a shout out to our Discord community. One of our users there pointed out right after we sent out picks about said quarterback situation, and so that we can able to quickly edit that and be like, oh gosh, even we didn't know this, and change the model to run it with the right situation. Discord chat is a fantastic community discussion all day, every day about whatever sports happening across all sports. A lot of great insights and a place to ask us questions and ask other people, other good sports bettors questions, good bankroll management discussion. You get every discussion out there. Folks, again, we've got 20 some odd picks, part of the honor roll package. If you're curious about why we like any of those picks, hit us up over on the Discord. A lot of what we have here is driven by the things that we think would make interesting television / things that both Cousin Jared and I can speak on. Some of their games may be things that really only one of us has an opinion on. And so wouldn't this make for as good a show? So there's other things we like. You can hit us up over there on that Discord. But folks, we always focus on value in the long run, and that's what we do here on Patreon with all of the picks, all of the A grades for this and for college basketball right now. And again, as always, if you're with us, we do really appreciate your support, helping us keep the lights on. I hate selling. I mention this all the time. I'm a terrible salesperson, but if we don't sell, we can't run the show. And so we gotta, try to do what we can, but we hope that we're providing good value for you over there. We think we are. And with all the information, all of the insights that you can get, all the extra picks for every single game across college football and again, college basketball here, that's getting going in full steam. So check out the links in the show description for Patreon. Because Jared, before we get started here, as we turn the page from week 12 to week 13, what's one thing on your mind?
The ACC is one thing that's on my mind because I feel like there was a lot of talk about the ACC with game day being at Pitt this past weekend and all the different permutations of the things that could happen. The two teams that controlled their own destiny were Virginia and Duke. Duke promptly said, I'm good with that, and went ahead and lost their game this past weekend. So they no longer control their destiny after they lost to Virginia. And so now you've got 4 teams tied with 1 loss at the top of the ACC. You've got Georgia Tech, who controls their own destiny, playing Pitt this coming weekend. You've got Virginia, who controls their own destiny, playing Virginia Tech in a couple of weekends. Then you've got SMU and Pitt, both with 1 loss there. And so everybody's talking about, hey, who are going to be, of these 4 1-loss teams, who is going to make it in the conference championship game? But I would say anybody who is asking themselves that question has not watched enough ACC football over the years, or has just, doesn't have a good enough imagination, because there is a completely reasonable way in which we end up with a 6-way tie for first with two losses there, 6 teams with 2 losses. And you're like, well, Jared, that seems a little, unlikely. What are some of the big things that have to happen for that to be the case? And I would say, well, that involves Virginia losing to Virginia Tech, who they've beaten like once in the past 20 years. Even when Virginia Tech's had bad teams, that's kind of been the case. You've got Georgia Tech. They got to lose to Pitt this weekend, but then Pitt could turn around and lose to Miami next week, which is certainly very possible. SMU has a game against Louisville this week, so certainly a losable game for them. So, everybody's talking about these one-loss ACC teams, but as usual, I'm just voting for total chaos, and I want to see the 6-way tie for first and see how
it is
how that
possible. And because Jared, it would be the most Miami thing for them to have 2 losses. Enough other chaos happened for them to avoid the ACC championship game and be in the playoff. Except then other teams lose, get into the ACC championship game just to lose it and miss the playoff because they had to play in the ACC championship.
Yeah.
That would be the most Miami thing ever. So there's some fun things that could happen.
Yes.
Obviously, Miami, arguably the best team of all of them and the most talented team of all of them. And
for sure, the most talented.
And on the outside looking in, and who knows about for the conference and the playoffs. So a lot of chaos there. Other conference chaos things as well. We'll talk about a couple of them as we go through the show. Because I just wanted to mention, I was just so tickled that I didn't even have to wake up the next morning to find out that my gut pick on Washington over
Purdue
was a winner because and because you're there, we talked. There's something about this. There's some science to the gut when it's that 1,000 hours thing. You've done something long enough when you're just kind of like, I just can't shake this feeling. It doesn't always work, right? Don't put your house on these things, people. Right? There's no such thing as locks and betting. But it works out more times than not. So I was just glad that before I even went to bed, I was like, nailed that one. So that was
Yep. Straight. I mean, and never a doubt. Very few, feels like this year, especially very few of those, there just never been any doubt, but certainly none.
99 times out of 100, I use the phrase never a doubt facetiously. This one, never a doubt, and I actually get to use it correctly. We'll turn the page here to week 13. All the segment names for this one. It's a weeknight game. It's an after dark game. It might be the best game of the weeknight games. I'm excited for this one. Hawaii and UNLV. Before we talk about the pick, if you're a college football junkie, if you're interested in college football as a sport, I want to talk real quick. The Mountain West is one of those crazy conferences, and you say, wait a minute. You've got San Diego State out in 1 loss, and you've got a bunch of 2-loss teams, but these 2-loss teams will beat up on each other. Here's the thing. San Diego State was cruising in this conference until they got shellacked by Hawaii. And this is the thing I wanted to point out. Hawaii, listen, Jared, the second best point differential in the Mountain West at a plus 62, only second to San Diego State's plus 73, who they just destroyed. This is a battle of 2 4-2 teams. Yeah. There are 5 teams tied for second right now in the Mountain West. Obviously, the loser of this one, almost assuredly, without massive, almost impossible chaos, will be out of the Mountain West race. But the winner will still be in the race. Interestingly enough, because of this race, the 5 4-2 teams, one of them is New Mexico, who we have loved. Not that we think New Mexico is a good team. We've loved backing New Mexico because we think they're undervalued. Because New Mexico has been a team this season that the market has just treated as a perennial 3-8 type team. Lo and behold, they're 7-3, and they're a very, very solid, decent Mountain West team. Their point differential is a +6 in conference. They're okay. But the one that's really confusing of these 5 teams is Fresno State is one of them, a team that was shut out at home for the first time in a conference game like in their history this year, but then beat Boise in a game that they had like 32 passing yards or something weird. They have a -2 point differential. So you got Fresno, New Mexico, you've got Boise, who we've been down on, I think, mainly because we just thought they were overrated. It's not that they're bad. It's just, we just thought they were a little bit overrated. And then these 2 teams, Hawaii and UNLV, all battling out fun Mountain West chaos could come as well. So this is a must-see if you're a Mountain West fan, a late-night game in the desert here, Hawaii at UNLV. But we're going to go under 65 at A-grade play because, Jared, I want to point out, these are the two highest scoring teams in the Mountain West. UNLV has scored 219 points. Hawaii has scored 216 in conference, but Hawaii
Yeah.
has been an under team. We've been preaching that all season. UNLV is 5-5 to the under, which means the books have been placing the numbers pretty high because Hawaii hasn't even had a single game this year where the total has been priced in the 60s. Now they've had 3 get to 70 or above because they put up some points against some of the weaker defenses, but Hawaii's been an under team for us, and this number is just too high. I love the fact that it's 65, which is your key number in the middle of the 60s right here.
Yep.
So key here, under 65 as an A-grade model says 60, obviously 61, 62, 63 are very likely outcomes, as is 65. Because, Jared, what's your take on this one?
I like the fact that UNLV's defense has seemingly had a pulse the past 2 weeks after being MIA for a stretch of conference play there. Only gave up 10 points to Colorado State 2 weeks ago and only gave up 26 to Utah State in double overtime. And Utah State is definitely a team that can put up some points, even though their defense is pretty bad. Utah State can put up some points offensively. So I like how UNLV's defense has been playing as of late. Usually when we're talking about Hawaii, we would talk about how the offense doesn't necessarily travel that well, just because of, the travel that Hawaii has. But when you look at it this year, man, Hawaii's offense has played really well away from home. And if you exclude a road game at Arizona, which, I feel like you should. They had one game at Fresno State. No, sorry, that was at home. They've scored at least 30 points in every conference road game so far this season, which just does not seem right for Hawaii. And not that, you and I are some of the biggest Hawaii fans there are. We want them to play well. But at the same time, you're telling me Hawaii is going to go a full season and score 30 points on the road every single game? That's just, I don't know, man. Like, you're stretching it. And I know this is not sound statistical data that I'm going off of here, but it's like, man, it feels like Hawaii has to have one stinker offensively on the road, and they haven't had it yet. And I'm thinking it could be this game. You talked about how great Hawaii has been all season. Timmy Chang deserves all of the credit in the world. But you know what? Hawaii came out and laid an egg in this game. Like, it would change nothing, on my opinion, for how Hawaii has done this season. So I like the way UNLV's defense is playing, and I just think Hawaii is due for just a subpar offensive game because we have not had one yet.
They've played some solid lower scoring games. They've played if their offense does kind of lay an egg, their defense, again, number 73 in the country, but from out West standards, that's not bad, right? Can keep this game interesting. So it's not necessarily to say that UNLV would run away with it. Obviously their pace is kind of more middle of the pack, but I think you make a great point that's absolutely on the table. The other thing that I think is worth noting is as we get to the end of the season here, you're going to start seeing some more unders because of weather. You're also going to start seeing some more unders because of the conference championship implications a little bit more. Take a few extra seconds for the play call, take a few extra seconds for this, be a little bit more cautious, that sort of thing. You're going to see a few more overs when teams have just given up, right? When it's just chaos and they don't care anymore, right? Yep. This is definitely not going to be one of those games. And so this game could go high scoring. Absolutely. There's a total in the 60s. So anytime you have a total in the 60s, folks, we're not saying this game's for sure staying in the 40s or 50s. This game could land in the 80s or 90s. That's always possible in a game in a dome with a total like this. I assume in a dome because I assume they play in the new
Yep, you're right.
The thing I want to point out here is it's not as simple as UNLV plays fast and has a better offense and defense, or else they wouldn't be 5-5 to the over. And I think people are looking at Hawaii, seeing what Hawaii traditionally has done, and seeing UNLV, and I just think this number's inflated. I think this total should be in the low 60s, and it's in the mid 60s. And so I think we're just getting a little bit of value, and that's what the model's helping us point out. So it's an A-grade under for us. And our weeknight after dark Friday night spotlight, whatever. We've got a billion segment names for this one. For our Saturday spotlight, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, USC at Oregon, a classic Big Ten matchup, cousin Jared.
Yeah. I already read somewhere it was like a clash of Big Ten rivals. Now I was like, what
It
what
might have
has
been
the
game
world
day
come
tweeting
to?
out that they were going to Oregon. It was, and I was like,
Yeah. There you go.
why? We're going to go under this one
Yeah.
as well. A grade. Forest sideline says this game has an average of 55 points. Because you're look at Oregon's pace. This is not. I was going to say not your father's Oregon. I want to say it's not our childhood Oregon. It's not our teenage years Oregon. It's not our young adulthood Oregon.
Yeah.
It's not the same Oregon.
Yeah.
They're really good on both sides of the ball, but they're not really trying to, score 60 points a game like some of the Oregons in the past. USC is still playing moderately fast. Still has a better offense and defense. But this USC team isn't quite the all offense, no defense. One of the first years of Lincoln Riley in USC's, when he was at USC, the sideline had their defense like number 100. I mean, it was terrible.
Yeah.
Their
It was
defense
terrible.
has got a
Yeah.
pulse now. It's not bad. They're going to be able to get some stops. Because Jared, another situation where I think the total is just a little bit inflated based off of the names on the jerseys and history and things of that nature without people quite realizing that it's more likely to be in the mid 50s than the upper 50s. So we're just getting a few extra points of value here. Also, look, we talk about key numbers, right? 58, a key number, 59, a real key number in college football. Although with Oregon's propensity to go for 2-point conversions, really every point might matter in an Oregon game.
Yeah.
Because what's your take on this one?
USC hasn't had a game get to the 60s since the end of September. The game where they played at Illinois, that got really crazy there at the end of the game. That was the last USC game that got into the 60s. And then when you look at Oregon, it's honestly been more of the same. They scored 56 points on Rutgers because everybody scores 56 points on Rutgers this season. But same thing, like that's the only game where the total in the Oregon game has gotten into the 60s aside from the Oklahoma State game right there at the beginning of the season. So neither of these teams, they both have the reputation for offense, but I think in both instances, their offenses are probably like half a step lower than what you actually envision them being, and both of their defenses are, half a step, maybe a full step higher than what you envision. And especially Oregon, when they've kind of had these, more challenging games, I guess, it hasn't necessarily been that, they've gone faster and scored more points. So they've slowed things down. They wanted to be more methodical. That Penn State game got to 54 in overtime. The Indiana game was at 50. Low scoring game against Iowa a couple of weeks ago. So I just think that this is an instance of both offenses just being slightly overrated and both defenses being slightly underappreciated.
I think that's very well said. This Oregon defense, number 4 according in the nation, according to Sideline, and nothing to be nothing to sneeze at, folks. One of the stronger units in the country. Now we'll go in chronological order. We'll start off here noon Eastern. Rutgers at Ohio State. Key numbers matter, folks. Under 56.5, A grade for us. Key numbers that we're getting in this one when Sideline says the number should be 49.5. Obviously, in the low 50s, 51, 52, in the mid 50s, you're looking at 55. But because 56 might be a key number, because it wouldn't shock anybody if this game was 49-7 or even 56-0. But 52-3 feels about right as well. Also, this Ohio State team just plays at a snail's pace. They are the slowest in the country according to how many seconds they take per snap. Their pace rating on the screen, as you can see, only 129. That's because part of the pace metric that I use is not just about how slow you are, but also how stingy your defense is with regards to making other teams take long drives and how slow paced your offense is with explosive plays. Ohio State does have explosive plays, and so that edges them up a little because they can score in a hurry, obviously. So that's why they're not 136, even though from a clock perspective, they are dead last. But obviously, this Ohio State defense is insanely legit. They go so slow. It's almost like watching an NFL game. There's just so few possessions. Rutgers defense is not good. And as you mentioned, everybody scores 56 on them. Ohio State might score 56, but Rutgers going to have a hard time scoring anything there in the horseshoe. Cousin Jared, tell us more.
Yeah, that was my main thesis here is if you've watched any of the Ohio State games this year, they remind me of some of the Alabama teams like mid Nick Saban era where they just suffocate you, and it's like it's not. And obviously, like I think Julian Sand is better than like AJ McCarron was, but that's the vibe I get where it's like they're not necessarily going out there to score a bunch of points. They're out there to make run the ball, have high percentage throws, when the opportunity presents itself, get, Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith out there in one-on-one matchups and exploit that. But they're not necessarily going out there to score 70 points a game. I think Ohio State, with how good they are this season, they don't have anything left to prove. They want to just get this in the bag, have a workman-like blue-collar performance, get ready for Michigan the following weekend, and then prepare themselves for the Big Ten championship game if they take care of business against Michigan. This is like, if this game was like 35 to nothing, like I would not be surprised. Like it's just get up big early, up 28-0 at halftime, run clock the second half. Ohio State's got bigger fish to fry than Rutgers.
I have so many things to say about Ohio State. Number one, we've been on their unders all season, and they didn't. Not only all of them have hit, but I mean, they're most of these unders have hit for Ohio State that we've been on.
Yeah.
This feels a little bit like playing NCAA football, and when you get your team too good and you get bored. And you're just like, how do I just get the wins and not get my guys hurt? And except this is real players, so you really don't want them to get hurt. I don't know if we're going to see more of this with this playoff era, but this is what Ohio State's done from day one. Like they knew losing to Texas wouldn't change anything. And not that they didn't want to win that game. I'm just saying, like, from literal the first snap of the season, I think they saw what happened last year and they said, okay, we need to be at our peak come December 20th. And how are we going to do that? We need no injuries because right now we are one of the best teams in the country. We're going to take the season to get better at our weaknesses. We're going to protect our guys. We're going to not, I mean, it's from every single game has been that way, they've had a couple games where they've scored a few more, but I mean, for the most part, and as the season gets on here, especially now, like I said, heading to Michigan, even more so, just get out of Dodge, they're going to win this game handily and easily. Just get the win, move on. We need nobody hurt. We need as fewest possessions as possible because they're looking at it going, we're going to play 16 games this year. And they know if you're playing 16 games, that's a full NFL schedule basically, or it used to be, right? They're like, we got to keep our guys healthy. And I don't know, we've been preaching all season. Key numbers matter here because Ohio State's going to score can score a lot of points. Like I said, they may not, but they can. And so we want the win on 55. Like, so I kind of, even though 56 isn't a key number, I kind of want the win there as well. But this total should be more around 50, daring you to go under a number, either in the upper 40s or missing out at least on 51, 52. A grade under for us there in Rutgers and Ohio State. 1 p.m. Eastern, cold as ice, baby. Baylor at Arizona. Cousin Jared, I had so many possible segment names for this one. I went with this one because Baylor is, I believe, 2-8 against the spread this year. And other than the UCF game, hasn't looked like a competent football team in ages. I almost decided not to have a segment name for this and just, take my Baylor shirt and just like rip it off like the Hulk.
I did not put this down as a game that we wanted to talk about. So this was you choosing to make yourself miserable.
I decided I would wear the Baylor basketball national champion 2021,
okay. Okay, there you go. There you go.
Talk about that while times were crazy, I was able to get on a plane and fly up to Indianapolis and I got to watch my Baylor Bears win a national championship against Gonzaga. That was a lot of fun. It's good times.
Yeah. In Indianapolis, a town that was near to your heart.
Which we now move back to, right? So, it's basketball season. I wanted to actually talk about not this game. I wanted to talk about last week's game against Utah, and I wanted to make a formal apology to the viewers, specifically to everyone on Patreon, that I did not make Utah -9.5 an official pick last week, even though it was a B grade. It was a massive oversight on my part. I have to take ownership where I screwed up, and I promise you I will get better and it will not happen again. It's really what I wanted to say because, you make mistakes in life and you got to own them. And here I am owning my mistake for that. We're not going to make that mistake this week. We're only 6.5 with Arizona as an A grade. This could have been I almost called this you're worried about the wrong key number and just said the key number you should be worried about is 30. I just left it at that. There's nothing else
Yeah.
for me to say. Because there's anything you want to add to this?
You did a pretty good job. I just, I think Arizona did really well getting Brent Brennan when they did after the end of 2 seasons ago. It's ended up being really well. Some rocky
Mm-hmm.
times last season, but he's definitely righted the ship. Arizona definitely a pleasant surprise this season. I feel like once a week I talk about it, but two teams just going in the opposite directions here. Two ships
Yeah,
passing in the
I don't
night.
know what. Again, that Baylor UCF thing was weird. But you could tell last week the exact same problems plaguing Baylor as has really plagued them all season. This Arizona team is solid, and Baylor hasn't looked good against a solid team since September. And I think that was kind of fluky in and of itself. But pretty straightforward here. We're only
Yeah.
6.5 with Arizona's in A grade. 3 p.m. Eastern. That Hansel is so hot right now. UConn at FAU. We got the win in this segment here last week. We're gonna lay the 7 with UConn, who's just been a fantastic backcourt. So they've covered 5 of their last 6. Sideline has them winning by an average of 16.5. FAU, not a terrible team for their conference, not a great team, just kind of middle of the pack. They play fast, and their offense isn't bad, but their defense is atrocious. UConn offense should have a field day with this FAU defense. Because Jared, what's your take?
UConn has to be. I'm sure somebody could come up with a team that's better fits into this category, but has to be the quietest 8-3 team in the country. I mean, they have just been doing great work. I saw somebody make the comment. I don't know where it was, but Jim Mora Jr. has to get some run for one of these open jobs, or maybe not a currently open job, but a job that opens because somebody else takes the job. I mean, with what he's done with this UConn
Without a home,
team,
without a
after
conference home.
Edsel, yeah, and I mean, it's just so many things stacked against you. And maybe the most important thing was I saw a screenshot this weekend. It's like the stadium was full, and they were like, it's been a long time since the stadium was full there for a UConn football game. So UConn, I mean, it is very rare. We talk about a lot of times how later in the season it gets more difficult to find edges. A lot of the books and the models are all kind of convening because they have more data to base this off of. No respect for UConn here. I mean, look at this. Sideline says this line should be 16.5, and we're all having to lay a touchdown. You're worried about the wrong key number. UConn's been super hot. It's just, early in the season, I wasn't necessarily a believer from the perspective of the way they played. It just didn't lend itself to, covering numbers over a touchdown. But like UConn has graduated past that point now, and it's like lay a touchdown, sure. Lay 10, sure. Lay 2 touchdowns against a team like FAU, sure. I just really like everything about it.
And obviously, as an independent, they end up being able to get a relatively softer schedule, which helps them. But their point differential in the season, Cousin Jared, 29 plus 129 on the season. I mean, the models loved them from the start, and we've been singing their praises. Sidelines got them up to number 44. I mean, they're a pretty solid team. I mean, they're not just not a bad team. They're pretty solid. They're 8-3, obviously, if they played in a stronger conference. Here's the thing. The number 44 overall team, I could pull it up here probably, but there's probably someone right around UConn, Florida. In the SEC is like 2-5 in conference. If they were in the SEC, they'd go 2-5 in conference or whatever, like Florida is, right? But they're also that's the thing is if you put Florida as an independent, got to play a soft schedule, Florida probably be 8-3 too, right? Like that's kind of the thing that we're saying. Like they're right around these, the other teams around them, according to Sideline, Kentucky, Nebraska, Kansas State, Houston. I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about here. Where it's like, depending on the way your schedule falls out and who you're playing, these are all kind of teams that are all about the same. And UConn just not getting any respect, and they haven't really all season. The fact that we only lay a 7 is mind blowing to me. So, great pick for us. 3 p.m. Eastern, South Florida at UAB, because you're fool me once. We've done this segment one time where we backed a team and it did not go well. And then we came back the next week and backed them again. And that's what's going to happen here with South Florida. We backed them last week. It did not go well. But we're going to turn right back around and back them again this time. South Florida minus 21 is an A grade. Sideline says they win by an average of about 27, maybe 28 against UAB, who has shown a little bit of signs of life offensively, defensively, not really not really doing much. Because the thing I love about this one is the pace. Obviously, South Florida, we know, plays extremely fast. UAB's pace is up there. There should be plenty of opportunities for us to cover this big number, plenty of possessions in this one. Tell us more.
I would, I feel like you know this by now if you've watched this, but watched us for any length of time. But sometimes you just have to disregard what happens in academy games. It can just weird things can happen. And that South Florida game against Navy, Navy's a good team. Don't get me wrong, but it's one of those things of just weird things can happen. And when I saw that this number was only 21, I was thinking, this is great. I feel like this is exactly what we're here for, to capitalize on a little bit of an overreaction to what happened with South Florida last weekend, because UAB is very bad. They had the one game after Dilfer was fired where they looked competent. I believe that was against Memphis. But then after that, they're kind of back to not really being able to do anything specifically defensively. They give up tons of points, and South Florida is a team that can capitalize on that. So, don't worry too much about last weekend. I think you got a great opportunity here, laying 21 with.
We will
South
talk
Florida.
about the American more in depth later on, but put a pin in this. First off, because you mentioned UAB against Memphis, and Memphis having 3 losses in the American, essentially basically out of the race. Again, barring just insane weird chaos these last 2 weeks because of that UAB loss, which is still going to go down as one of the weirder results of the season. Also, though, take note, because of the fact that it is a 4-way tie for the American, South Florida sitting there with 2 losses, probably a pretty good chance for a win here. So they're going to be lurking with those 2 losses, because I don't really think UAB is going to give them any trouble. We'll look back to the American discussion here later on. Because Jared, the new segment here, opposites attract. This Duke North Carolina game, this is a strength on strength, weakness on weakness. We want to do one thing, you want to do the other thing. Complete opposite game. And for me, that leads to a lot of question marks. So I'll break it down, folks, real quick. Number 24 ranked offense in the country, Duke, versus the number 46 ranked defense in the country, North Carolina. Duke's by far better on offense. North Carolina by far better on defense. Duke's defense has been what's cost them this season, almost cost them in that Clemson game. For instance, when they were just giving up big plays left and right, number 76 in the country. But North Carolina's offense is the thing really holding them back. That offense is terrible at number 107. Duke wants to play fast with that good offense. North Carolina wants to play slow with their better defense. This is a complete clash of styles in every which way. So, Jared, how are you going to make heads or tails of this type of game? Our official pick under 51.5 is a B grade. Sideline says 49. Only B grade value. So what's your angle on this one to say why it's worth a pick?
So, and I don't know if you have the ability to look this up while I talk, but you mentioned that North Carolina offense. I would be interested to know how many Power 5 offenses are worse than North Carolina at number 107 there. For me, it's mostly that North Carolina's offense is really, really bad. But I kind of also wanted to talk about this game because I feel like we haven't talked about this North Carolina team with Bill Belichick very much. We talked about him briefly
at the start of the season. TCU win, which was one of our best picks of the season right there. That was over after the end of the first quarter.
Yeah. North Carolina has improved. Are they good? No, but they have made improvements throughout the course of the season. And a lot of those improvements have been on defense. Belichick said in some of his press conferences after the game, I feel like I have done a better job of understanding my players, basically calling and scheming things up to their strengths and everything. But a lot of that has manifested itself on the defensive side of the football, not as much on the offensive side of the football. So I think this is going to be a lower scoring game. I think Manny Diaz on the Duke sideline might be like, hey, Bill Belichick is a defensive guy. I'm a defensive guy too. Let's just make this a real slobber knocker. And this game ended up being something like 24 to 20. I mean, honestly, I think North Carolina would be doing good if they got to 20 points. But I think this is going to be fairly low scoring, mostly because I don't trust North Carolina to do.
I just have to check with our producer to make sure you said slobber knocker there. That was something.
Yeah,
because the answer to your question is 5. And for funsies, I'm gonna actually turn this around on you. Can you guess the 5 schools that Sideline has ranked worse offensively? The North Carolina, if you want to play at home, pause the video right now and write down, see if you can write down 5 offenses, Power 4 offenses that you think are worse than North Carolina from an efficiency standpoint.
Okay. Well, Oklahoma State, that's just my default
They're
guess.
second worst.
Okay. So Oklahoma State,
Stanford is number 3 at the bottom.
Cal? No, I don't think it's Cal. Not UCF. Is it a Big Ten team?
There is a Big Ten team down here. Yes,
Purdue
is actually
Purdue.
8th worst in the country. They actually get on their antenna. Yeah.
Wow.
I think that this
Man,
one's a
there's a
little bit
Big Ten
tougher
team.
because they're there because of a quarterback situation. Actually, 2 of them are there because of a quarterback situation. Wisconsin's the Big Ten
do
team
not
you're
know.
thinking of, who's on their who's on their
Wisconsin,
4th
yeah.
string quarterback, not necessarily by
Yeah.
the 3rd stringer's a senior, and so they're letting the true freshman play.
Mm. Yeah, Wisconsin. I should have gotten
So
that one.
they're third worst. 4th worst is Colorado.
Interesting.
Team we've been
Interesting.
very, very down on here lately. Worst offense in the country, according to Sideline. That's of the Power 4 is also there because of a quarterback injury. Completely fell apart after their quarterback got injured. That'd be Syracuse. So hopefully, if you're at home, hopefully you did better than Cousin Jerry there.
Yeah. Syracuse. I was shocked to see that Syracuse has entered Oklahoma State territory.
That's how bad things have gotten with their, losing their starting quarterback.
Well, that was a fun.
Hopefully, you had fun of it if you were at home. Cousin Jared, Arkansas, Texas, 3:30 p.m. We're going to return to the "You Sure About That" segment, which we got the win in last week, so we're now 2-2 on this one on the course of the season. Arkansas and Texas, we're going to go over 55.5 as a B grade. Sideline says 57.6 is the average. Arkansas wants to play fast. Texas wants to play slow. Arkansas is better on offense. Texas is better on defense. My only thought on this game is I've watched some of Texas games, and I'm like, Texas going over? Because that's my only question. Texas going over, are you sure about that?
I mean, this is mostly about, okay, so here's kind of my thought process on this game. I mean, a complete sandwich spot for Texas. I mean, if there is a bad spot to be in, it is this game for Texas, coming off the Georgia game. Looking forward to the Texas A&M game the next weekend. I also should know this, but I don't. What time is this game? Is this a 2:30 game?
3:30 Eastern, so yeah.
3:30 Eastern?
Old Southwest Conference rivalry renewed.
Basically, this is a big sandwich spot for Texas here. You mentioned Arkansas loves to hate Texas. They'll be ready to go. But if you have watched any of this Arkansas team this year, that the manifestation of that is, the manifestation of the combination of all of these factors, in my opinion, is not going to be a low scoring game because Arkansas just seemingly doesn't have it in them. That last week's game against LSU wasn't the most high scoring game, but we know LSU's got their own problems. I think Arkansas could come out and they could have like 20 points in the first half. Texas coming out slow, and then Texas maybe kicks it up a notch in the second half and goes on and wins. But I just think there's a floor with how many points Arkansas is going to score in this game. I think they could score like 24, 27, 28 points. And if that's the case, I think, you're not going to have to ask too much Texas to go over a number like 55.5.
Just for funsies here, these teams have played 7 times since the Southwest Conference dissolved in 1991. 1992 was the first year that everything had changed. They played in the Cotton Bowl in 2000. They played, of course, in that infamous Houston Bowl, whatever that was, about a decade.
The borderline erotic one.
About a decade ago.
Yeah.
Because I think you'd be surprised to know that since they played 7 times since the year 2000, Arkansas has won 4 of the 7. Small sample size. All the players are different other than from last year's teams. And last year's Texas team was a lot better than this year's. So doesn't really mean much. I just thought that was interesting because you've got a lot of really good Texas teams in that span. When they played, you had a number 14 ranked Texas team lose the Cotton Bowl, a number 6 ranked Texas team lose at home. In 2003, you had number 7 ranked Texas win in 2004, number 7 ranked Texas win in 2008. And then you had number 15 ranked Texas lose in 2021. And then last year's Texas team was ranked number 3. So a lot of really good Texas teams playing this Arkansas team. So big rivalry here means a lot more for Arkansas, I think, than Texas.
Yeah.
Texas means a little bit something to some of the older fans, like my father being a Texas grad. This game probably would mean as much to him as the A&M game, honestly. A lot of Texas fans consider Arkansas and A&M kind of more equal rivals behind Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But for Arkansas, this is a big game anytime they get to step up in class and play these bigger teams.
Yeah. I can't, I would really like to have a pessimism off with my uncle around the Texas and A&M game. I think that would be great. How deep we could both go with pessimistic takes on our team.
because you're not. We'll hold that thought because we will get to Texas A&M later on in the show. Reminder, folks, you don't gotta watch them to make the monies, and we remind you that every week in one way or another. Times it's better to go to bed. Sometimes it's better to spend time with friends and family. Sometimes there's other mental health things to do. Sometimes there are other games to watch. There is more to life than this, because once you've made the bet, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And folks, unless you're live betting, and even then, live betting, in terms of healthy sports betting behavior, something we probably shouldn't do a ton of, right? It's kind of gets into a little bit more of it. It can lead to some scary. So I encourage you, if you were to treat that with caution, with the live betting thing, right? This is definitely one of those games. We don't want to be watching it. We don't want to be live betting it. We want to just make the bet and kind of ignore it, and then we'll see what happens. It's either going to win or lose. Either way, watching won't change it, and it won't be a fun one to watch. Michigan State and Iowa. Iowa's played in just so many ugly games. Everyone knows that. Michigan State's played in a lot of ugly games. Iowa's pace now down to dead last. And again, it's not just the pace we talked about. It's not just how slow they are. It's the explosive play part. Iowa does not have the explosive plays, because we already talked about it last week. In the build-up for that USC game, their running game is so dang efficient every which way they go, and that just leads to long, slow drives. But this Iowa team is good. It's just ugly. So I think it's got them at number 13. We talked about Michigan State here either last week or the week before, and saying that they had covered a bunch of games, but barely faded them, and they didn't come close. I think it was last week here in covering. I kind of see the same thing happening here. They were outclassed against Penn State. They're going to be outclassed against Iowa. The model does take into account the expected number of points, and given the expected number of points in this game is about 30, maybe 40. Right, I'd be a little facetious, probably at least 40. But it doesn't expect a lot of points, and so it knows that, and it decreases the expected spread. It's harder to win bigger when you have fewer possessions, when you have fewer points expected. And even knowing that, the model still says A grade on Iowa minus 17. Jared, what's your take on this one?
This is for Michigan State. Iowa is not the team that you want to be playing right now. And what I mean by that is Michigan State's had a terrible season. 3 weeks ago, they had to get up for the Michigan game. 2 weeks ago, they had the heartbreaker. They lost to Minnesota in overtime. Last week against Penn State, you felt like they were in the game. They were only down by 4 going into the fourth quarter and ended up losing that game by 18 points.
And that was at home, and now you got to go on the road.
Yes. And I just don't know if Michigan State has it in them at this point. They only have 3 wins. They're not going to a bowl game.
They only have 3
games.
wins, all in the non-conference. They've lost 7 straight. They're 0-7 in conference. I mean,
yes. And this Iowa, again, I just feel like this Iowa team specifically, when you're not making a bowl game and it's cold and it's getting close to Thanksgiving.
And Iowa's doing Iowa things.
And it's just, man, this feels like one of those games where you just may not get anything out of Michigan State at this point. And, Iowa's going to do what Iowa does. Michigan State's going to have a hard time getting anything going offensively. They're just going to grind them. So this is Michigan State being bad, but it's also I don't think at this point in the season it's going to be really tough for Michigan State to play 4 full quarters against Iowa, which is what I think would have to happen for them to cover.
Again, mentioning what they have done here recently, Michigan State, not to continue to bang on the same drum necessarily, but it's either been close, lucky covers, or it hasn't come close. And at some point, just kind of mentioned like last week, that at some point it just grinds on you a little bit more every week. Also, kind of harken back to something we said last week with Purdue, that same sort of thing where Purdue had gotten up and played a close game and had a heartbreaking loss. And at some point, it's just like you go on the road and you just got nothing left. The season's almost over. And this kind of feels like the same thing here, that this feels like one of those Iowa wins, 22-0 kind of games. 29-3. You got to give a weird number because Iowa's playing. So someone's going to have a weird number.
Yeah, of course.
So we're going to hit the 17 there with Iowa and A grade play. Because you're worried about the wrong key number. We are now 2-1 in this segment, with the only loss, of course, coming ironically enough by the hook. But this one's ECU -3. So obviously love it here at -3. And I think I've even seen a 2.5. So if you shop around and can find it, can get down at 2.5, even better. But even if it goes higher, folks, this one I think you're worried about the wrong key number if it gets out even to 3.5 or 4. This is one that should be 7, maybe even 10. And the thing I want to point out about this was ECU is a very solid team in the American, whereas UTSA just isn't that good this year. They have a couple of weird results that stick out, but on balance, this UTSA team just hasn't been that good. Cousin Jared, tell us more.
I think my hot take on this game is that aside from North Texas, I think ECU is the best team in the American. So I would put them above South Florida. I would put them above Memphis. I would put them above Tulane. This East Carolina team, in my opinion, is really good. And it was one of those things where last season they made the coaching change midseason. Instantly, the interim coach
They're
came
a
in
whole new
there
team,
and
and it
made a
looks
really
fantastic.
big difference. Yep, got the full-time job, and it's really carried over into this season. They lost at Tulane this year. They lost at home to BYU. I mean, nothing wrong with that. Really, the only thing you might be able to say is, okay, they lost to NC State first game of the season. Would feel a little bit better about them if they had won that game. But this team's been hot. They're getting hot at the right time. Beat Memphis last week. If this play goes wrong, maybe the reason why this line is what it is. UTSA has played much better the past 2 or 3 seasons at home than they have on the road. And so that might be where part of this is coming from. But to your point, I just think this season, these two teams are on completely different levels. And it's not going to happen just because of the way that the standings are structured, I don't think. But if I could pick, I would want to see East Carolina and North Texas in the American Championship game. I think that would be tons of fun, and you could not set the total high enough if those two teams played.
Glad you mentioned that, Cousin Jared, because now we need to talk about the American Conference, because it is also bonkers. A 4-way tie for first. Navy has played one more game. One loss has Memphis on the road in the week before the conference championship. Has potential loss written all over it. North Texas probably gets 2 wins out of their last 2 games. Tulane probably gets 2 wins out of their last 2 games. ECU is the other team tied for first. They get this one, and then at FAU, likely win there. Could end up being a 3-way or 4-way tie for first in the American, depending on how things play out. And if enough teams screw around, we mentioned USF earlier, likely to finish the season with 2 losses if they take care of business as well to throw into that chaos. So if there are some upsets, it could get a little bit interesting there. But if there aren't, again, it could be a 3 or 4-way tie, and ECU could be involved. I wouldn't know who has the tiebreaker in that yet. I'm sure somebody out there already knows that scenario. Could probably drop it in the comments if they wanted to. I wanted to touch on what you said about UTSA because I think you could be right that there is a little bit of that bias going on. But what I wanted to point out is the not so fast, my friend, which is opening or first home game of the season, lost to Texas State. Didn't cover. They were favored. They lost. Didn't cover. I'm not counting Incarnate Word as an FCS school. Next home game, Rice. They won at home big, covered. Next home game, Tulane won big and covered. That's 4 home games. One of them doesn't count because they're FC. One of them doesn't count because it's Rice. So you're really looking at Texas State and Tulane where they split. And then when you look at the other games, a lot of them are they've either won and not covered like Colorado State, or they won and covered last week. That was Charlotte, though. We've talked a lot about Charlotte and it just being not good things happening there in their football program. And so I'm like, yeah, they covered against Charlotte. That doesn't really tell me much. That Tulane one was the weird one. If you just take away the Tulane one, but it's like they covered against Rice. That doesn't really tell me anything. Their only other cover of the year was the game at Texas A&M to open the season when they got a 40-yard fourth down
with 30 seconds
and a
left,
game that cost us the under. And I just think this UTSA team, I really think if you look at it from the lens of, I don't know what happened in that Tulane game. That was very weird. Then I think you just see this team isn't very good because otherwise it's not so much that I think they aren't better at home and that they, whatever. It's just, to me, there's just not a lot of data to justify that. It's really just the Tulane game. Even if you want to count the Rice game, that's still just 2 data points. Whereas again, you go to Texas State being a data point. It's not like they've played a bunch of good competition at home. They've had, opportunities against better caliber opponents, etc. So I think this is kind of one of those until you prove it, I'm not buying it for UTSA.
Right. Yeah.
We've got again East Carolina
Yeah.
was by an average of almost 10 points, so we're gonna lay the 3 with them again. I know there's a 2.5 out there as well, so shop around and get the best number you can. Folks, a new segment. We talk about this all the time, though, so it's kind of a shame it took me this long. You're never as bad as you look at your worst. And Cousin Jared, Southern Miss looked bad last week.
They looked
Ooh,
terrible.
We were singing their praises, and what in the world happened? But talk about this all the time. You look terrible one week, and if you have other data points that says you're better, sometimes you just got to throw it out. And the counter is true as well. We talk about, right? You know, if you're really bad, and like we talked about just now with UTSA, you look good one week. Sometimes you just throw it out, right? Every team is going to have one game that they play way above their heads and one they play way below their heads. We're just going to assume that was this for Southern Miss this last week because against a Texas State team that has been a massive disappointment. You combine Texas State's best performance of the year with Southern Miss's worst performance of the year in a true WTF in the usual sense of the phrase.
Yeah.
Just gonna ignore that. We're gonna lay the 2 with Southern Miss here A grades. That then says they win by an average of 9. They're the much better team, and we're just gonna say, hey, after a performance like that, you know what happens? Best week of practice all season, right? Because Jared,
Yeah.
Southern Miss -2. What do you think?
Well, yeah. So I would say Southern Miss did not play as bad as that final score was. They had 400 yards of total offense. They averaged over 5 yards a play. The issue was they had 3 turnovers, and Texas State was able to have more time of possession, which is abnormal for Texas State because, you know, Texas State plays fast. And so generally, even though they play well, their time of possession isn't that much. So you combine just the pace that Texas State played with, and then the fact that you can't give them the ball back to them, things kind of compounded their, you know, turnovers. You have a -3 turnover differential. That's the kind of stuff that can happen. I'm just still a believer in Southern Miss. I'm not going to let that one game derail me. I just, you know, hope Major Applewhite can get it together here because the South Alabama team's not very good. He might be on the job market if things don't turn around here at the end of the season.
I would love, hopefully Baylor gets a new coach this season. Major Applewhite come in, step in as offensive coordinator. Let him take care of what he knows best. He's thrived in that role before.
Yeah, there you go.
One can hope.
He has, yeah.
Well, don't run, folks. Michigan at Maryland. We're going to take 13.5 with Maryland. We like to talk about a game like this if we can every week where we like the side. We like the side at this number. We're going to lock in this number. But no reason to rush if you can wait around, if you can shop around, if you can get a 14. Obviously, the push protection there offers a little bit more value because even without the 14, you still think it's worth taking the 13.5 with Maryland in a game that Michigan's offense against Maryland's defense ought to be a pretty even fight. Maryland's going to struggle to move the ball against Michigan's defense. Maryland's offense hasn't been very good. Michigan's defense obviously is pretty strong. Michigan's going to slow this pace down, and that might help us have fewer possessions. But otherwise, what are you seeing in this that makes you think, even without the 14, I still want to be on Maryland plus 13.5?
Yeah, so I like the fact that Maryland's at home in this game. Michigan hasn't looked very good on the road this season. But go back and look at the teams that Michigan has played in conference play. They had the win over Nebraska. That was a good win. They went into Lincoln. They averaged 9 yards a carry. They looked really good. But since then, they beat Wisconsin by 14. Okay, fine. They lost at USC. They beat Washington at home 24-7. So that was a dominating
Although
performance.
Washington's been a very Jekyll and Hyde confusing team all season.
Yes, they have been up and down. But then they beat, defeated Michigan State by 11. They beat Purdue by 5. They beat Northwestern by 2. Like, on the whole, this has to be one of the weaker Big Ten schedules with Nebraska, Wisconsin, USC, Washington, Michigan State, Purdue, and Northwestern. I just think that Michigan's getting a little bit too much respect, and the fact that they're going on the road, this feels to me, I think this would be a very similar game to what they've played the past 3 weeks from the Michigan side, where, yeah, they're probably going to win, but they've got to really button things down. And if they don't play a perfect game, I think Maryland's going to be able to hang around. And that may mean that Michigan wins by, 6, 7, 10, 11 points. But man, I just feel like there's a lot more ways that Maryland covers the 13.5 than they
There
don't.
is a 14 out there at a sports book that, you may or may not be able to get any money done at, viewer. And again, as I always talk about, if you can, at this, congrats. Go ahead and get your money down at these places, and just keep watching, and eventually you won't be able to. And that'll be a badge of honor for you.
Yeah.
New segment, Zigzag Zing, Carolina edition, Coastal and South. The Carolinas zigzag because Coastal Carolina didn't look great last week. South Carolina did look great last week. Let's have a little zigzag here, because I think this is a little bit of both what we talk about all the time, where you're not as good as you look at your best, you're not as bad as you look at your worst. This number's inflated because of, in my opinion, Coastal not getting the win last week in what was a coin toss game, and South Carolina, of course, and their incredible performance in the first half against A&M, showing that they can at least hang around, that they are, a solid football team. And then says that South Carolina, though, wins this by an average of 17. And this is why we have the model to help remind us of, it's not just about what happened last week. It's not just about these one game we compare. It's not just about South Carolina. I swear, after their performance against A&M, everyone's talking about, oh, and remember what happened in week one. It's like, that doesn't really, or week one. That wasn't a good, it was Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's not that good, right? It's not like that was that impressive. And so I think this is just an inflated number, and we're here to take the value on it. These inflated numbers doesn't mean we're going to win all of them. It just means, we find 5 of them, we go 3 and 2, there's a little profit. That's what we're all about here, is winning more when we win than we lose when we lose. So we're going to take the plus 23 with Coastal of the Carolinas. Cousin Jared, what you got for us?
I am sure there are worse spots for a team. I would be hard pressed to come up with a worse spot than what South Carolina is in right now, coming off the absolutely deflating loss to A&M, having Clemson the next week. With the loss to A&M, they're officially not going to a bowl game. A team that was top 15 preseason.
You
now
start
not
up
going
a new
to a
dynasty
bowl.
of NCAA 26, and when you're moving teams around conferences, South Carolina's got a little number next to them. And I'm like, wait, what? I forgot that was a thing. I can't believe people were that dumb.
Yeah, and this is, I really don't know. We joked at the top of the show about, some quarterbacks, some very mid-tier, some might even say lower-tier quarterbacks leaving school to prepare for the NFL draft.
Yep.
If South Carolina had a couple players say they were leaving to get ready for the draft, I would say more power to you. Don't blame you at all. They got some really good players there. So that's kind of just the first thing for me, is I just think this is the worst spot in so many different ways. The other thing, and this is completely anecdotal, I don't have the data to back this up, which is the kind of analysis that I'm sure people come here for. But I feel like the smaller in-state Carolina schools always play the bigger in-state Carolina schools closely, whether that's, basically any of
East Carolina
really is
the one that...
East Carolina, Coastal Carolina.
Well, you see it
of
up
these
in
other schools
in the Virginias too, because Old Dominion has been this as well.
Old Dominion, App State's another one of the Carolina schools. Always give North Carolina fits. Always give North Carolina State
James
fits.
Madison's in it.
Give South Carolina. Really, the only team that's kind of been immune from that has been Clemson, because Clemson has just been so good over the past 15 years or so. And Coastal Carolina, we talked about them last week. We didn't get the win with them on the money line last week, but they're already at 6 wins. They're bowl eligible. They're not a bad team. So yeah, this is just, I dislike everything about this for South Carolina. I mean, absolutely.
Plus, they were plus odds last week at Georgia Southern. They didn't get it done, but lost by 5. It was a close game. I think, is what it is. I don't really think that takes away much from the fact that they won and covered their previous 4 games. They did struggle going up in class earlier in the season, absolutely. But as we talked about, they've played a lot better as of late. And this is a lot about the spot. This was South Carolina early in the season, maybe a little bit different spot of the schedule. But given, given the fact that they, like you said, the terrible spot that they're in here after coming off of that loss, and then, like you said, the big rivalry against, in-state rivalry against Clemson.
Yeah.
Next week, because I want to talk about the SEC real quick.
I don't.
First
but
off,
we can.
we have to talk about A&M. We have to talk about the fact that
What do you want to know?
the graphic of, the best 8 teams on one side and the worst 8 teams on the other side, and the A&M 7 wins have come against literally 7 of the 8 teams on the worst side. Have not had to play Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, or Tennessee.
Hmm. Hmm.
Whatever the heck that was in the first half. We talked about it last week, a little bit of like, maybe we were worried about this and that, but it was like, oh, but the crowd will be the ticket prices and the crowd will be behind them. There's been a lot of talk in the last couple, decades of, Kyle Field, like it's a really, you and I've been to a game, you've been to several games, you and I've been to a game there together. I was at one of the last one of the big games against University of Texas there. Electric atmosphere, just an incredible atmosphere. And yet the home field advantage hasn't really played out when the big crowds have been. What's going on there? It feels like, it's still a good team, but there's just a lot of questions, I feel like. For an undefeated number 3, top of the SEC team, there's a lot of questions.
Well, it's just because, see, I gotta go pull up the schedule, because I can do this a lot off the top of my head, but just for clarity's sake, I need to bring up the schedule. But the real issue is that I think when they play the way that they're capable of, not even play when they're capable of, when they play consistently, they are a exceptionally good team and should be at the top of the SEC, in my opinion. But I can go through here at every game and tell you multiple strings and multiple points of the game where they just completely melted down for a period of time. So UTSA gave up 177 yards rushing to their running back. Nothing against UTSA, but Texas A&M shouldn't be giving up 177 yards to the UTSA running back at home. Game against Notre Dame, turnovers, muffed punts, punt return touchdowns, blocked punts. In that Notre Dame game, they still won. Auburn, the entire game was terrible. Auburn was A&M just penalties. They had something like 15 penalties for like 160 yards in that game. It was absolutely crazy. The Arkansas game, couldn't get a stop against Arkansas. LSU had the terrible second quarter, and South Carolina the entire first half. They are fine. They are a great team 85% of the time, but they just cannot get out of their own way, whether it's penalties or things like that. If A&M would play a complete game, you would be like, yeah, 100%. They're one of the top 3 teams in the country, but they can't seem to do it. And I think they are completely deserving of a spot in the playoff, but picking them to win multiple playoff games for me would be very, very difficult, because they just have not been able to string together 4 whole quarters almost in any game.
And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't point out, and you already mentioned, right, the Notre Dame game, yes, the conference schedule has been very weak relative to what their peers have had to play, but that Notre Dame win, obviously, top caliber win for sure.
Yeah.
On the road as well.
Yeah.
I also wanted to point out, because I have a very lukewarm take here for you, viewer, and that is, yes, A&M's only played the bottom of the conference, but the bottom of the SEC is actually still kind of good. Viewer, you might say, first off, I mentioned this before. If anybody's watched this, knows I'm not an SEC homer. I'm not, I was vehement that for the first, 10 years of the BCS that, ESPN was pumping up the SEC, and it was just nonsense, that they weren't any better than the Big 12. They weren't any better than these other conferences. But that's changed. That's just the way it's changed now. And how do I know that? Folks, the SEC has 8 non-conference losses as an entire 16-team conference. And I can remember every single one of them. And I counted up, and like Conference USA with 12 teams is like 29. And that's a bad conference, right? and that's the thing, because the average team there has over 3 non-conference losses, and I think they're only getting 4 non-conference games. Like, that's the thing. Like, we have data that helps us here. And viewer, I just wanted to go through that if you're not a college football junkie, if you're just here for strictly betting, this isn't fast forward till we get to the next game. But if you love college football here with us, here are the losses that the SEC's had. I'm not even looking at a list. I'm looking at the standings and just the teams, because I can tell you here just based on teams. Texas lost at Ohio State. That's like literally only by like 14, whatever, like not over 7, whatever, not a bad loss whatsoever. Then you have Florida, who lost to Miami, who Miami talent-wise is a top 5 team. Florida lost to South Florida in terrible weather in a game they shot themselves in the foot, got their coach. What part of the reason their coach got fired? Safety on a bad punt, multiple penalties on touch. I mean, just a bonkers game. Then you have Arkansas, who lost to Memphis, which is like, Memphis has been kind of up and down, but Memphis isn't a bad team. I think it was on the road. Arkansas lost to Notre Dame, which is, again, nothing to be ashamed of. I think that Alabama lost to Florida State, which, again, at the end of the season might go down as one of the weirder games because Florida State has just not looked that good.
And I would even say I give Arkansas a pass against Memphis before I give Alabama at this point, before I give Alabama a pass on Florida State.
Right. And that's it. That's like, it was 8, might have been 6. I don't even know how many, whatever. That was it. That's every conference loss that they've had the entire season. So, yes, they've played the bottom, and the bottom is losing to the top, which means they're not as good as the top, but also they're not that far behind. A lot of these bottom teams in the SEC are ranked in sideline. Like you see here, South Carolina, who is 1-7 in conference, is still ranked number 56 in the country. Like that's the thing is that the SEC is still just insanely good. Literally top to bottom at this point. It's not even, it used to be that the bottom, you had the Vanderbilt at the bottom or the Kentucky's at the bottom or whatever. Vanderbilt's obviously ranked in a really good team. Kentucky's not great, but they're at least half decent. And so it's just bonkers conference. And another one that the conference championship game is going to get really interesting.
Exactly. And the other thing I would say with A&M is and you know this, I don't have to tell you this. I'm not a big homer, but for any of the others, like I'm not the biggest A&M homer there is out there. But for all of those, frustrating portions of those games, there's been 3/4 of the game where it's like they're just crushing them. We've talked many times on this show where like sometimes it is about how bad you beat the bad teams. And there have been points, take away, 10 minutes in the second quarter of that LSU game, and A&M just absolutely tore
the whole
apart.
second half of South Carolina. To be able to come back from that and do that. And that's why we laid it with A&M last week. We were like, we expected maybe a slow start, but I was thinking slow start meant it's 10-7 at the half. And then what was the second half? You were plus 28. Okay, you're down 10-7 at the half. You're plus 28. That means you win by 25.
Yeah.
That was what we were thinking would be the thing last week because that A&M team can dominate. It's just that was just an insane performance there. And again, what that was, that's a really rough spot here now for South Carolina bouncing back. If they can, kudos to them. But I don't, there is something to be said for maybe they take their frustrations out on them, but also maybe this is a really frustrating season. And again, by this point of the season, you just run out of stuff. And again, you're looking at, spoiling Clemson's, season next week because Clemson is still questionable for a bowl at 5-5. Maybe we can keep them out of a bowl game. You're thinking about the NFL draft. You're thinking about anything else because you don't want to think about your season or what just happened. if you're South Carolina, we've got.
Well, and the one other thing about the SEC is everybody who's complaining about A&M playing the bottom of it, you will be happy to know that if A&M loses to Texas, there's almost no reasonable logical way they get to the SEC championship game. So everybody can come back and have at it then because if they lose to Texas, they're basically out. Which
is interesting because I know there was some chatter about did A&M want to lose to South Carolina, just throw that game, then they want because they want to beat Texas, and then not play in the conference championship game at that point because why would you want to play an extra game against a really tough opponent and then just go in as the whatever seed you are, get you your home game, be the 5 seed, be the 6 seed, get you your home game and, play it nice warm weather in December. Who cares? And now, of course, they don't want to lose to Texas and miss the bowl game. I assume Alabama is going to beat Auburn and move to 7-1. Georgia is 7-1, and they're done
7-1
for their conference season.
Yep.
Ole Miss, we assume will beat Mississippi State. I say assume on these. Chaos has happened. Weird things happen in November, but we do assume that all 3 of those teams will finish 7-1. If not 2 of them will, 1 of them for sure will.
Yeah. So, and A&M will be 4th if all those teams finish at 7-1. A&M.
So I guess, unfortunately, no way for enough chaos to happen to get Vanderbilt in the conference championship. And that would have been obviously the dream. Moving on, our last game here. After dark, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, San Jose State at San Diego State. We already covered the Mountain West, and of course, San Diego State's dominance of it, led by their defense, which you've outlined before. Last time we talked about San Diego State, we did not play them against Hawaii. We played the under and got the win there. Not because of their defense, but because of their lack of offense. Their offense is still very good by Mountain West standards. San Jose State is a very mediocre Mountain West team who does like to play fast, but is going to have a hard time going anywhere against San Diego State. We're going to lay the 12 with the Aztecs B grade sideline says the weighted average of 15. A little bit of value here as we're on the easier side of 14. Cousin Jared, you're a Mountain West guy, so tell us more.
Yeah, I'm hoping nobody actually watched it, but Professor, without looking, would you venture a guess as to what happened to San Jose State?
I have
this
not a
past
clue.
weekend? They lost to Nevada. Guess what the score was?
I do have a little bit of inside information here. I do remember seeing a tweet about Nevada having a different start to the game than their previous week. So I know Nevada got up pretty big early. So I'm going to guess Nevada won like 38-7 or something.
55.
Wow. And I thought I was going kind of outrageously extreme too.
Yeah, no, this is it will not get any notoriety because it's the Mountain West and whatnot. But one of the more
and that was Nevada's
games
first conference win of the season. It might have been their first Division I win of the season. I don't know if their other win was I don't know who their other win was a non-conference.
No, I don't know who it was either, but I'm gonna guess it was probably somebody not very good. They beat Sacramento State.
Yeah, so that was my hunch. It was one of those schools.
Yeah. Things aren't good for San Jose State. So give me San Diego State, which, like I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, you could double the number of points allowed and they would still be first in the Mountain West in points allowed. You could have tripled it and they would still would have been like ahead of four other teams.
They doubled it against Hawaii was the problem. Because they've given up 86
that's true, but then
on the season and they gave up 38 against Hawaii. So if it wasn't for that Hawaii game.
Yeah. Yeah, well, but then they only gave up, 7 last weekend. So they're trying their best to get back on the right side of things there. I just really like San Diego State. I think they're first in the conference for a reason. If you look at their outcomes this season at Hawaii game, as much as we love Hawaii, a little bit of an outlier there.
Going to the island sometimes is weird.
I think. Yeah, exactly. And so I think that I love San Diego State's defense here, and also the fact that whatever the heck happened to San Diego State, like I could see that being one of those things that ultimately gets you beat twice. Like there are some games that are just so bad that they just linger and you can't really bring yourself to get out of the funk. And man, I am wondering if that 55-10 loss for San Jose State is just one that takes them an extra week to get over.
To come full circle here, we mentioned Arizona at the top of the show with Burt Brennan and how impressive of a job and how good things are looking there in Arizona. And he was the reason that San Jose State as a program had turned itself around the 7 years that he spent there. And they actually, they made a few bowl games. They were looking pretty impressive and things have not gone as well since he left. Sort of like the 12 there with San Diego State. Because that's all we've got here for this week's show. We get, I think, 20 extra picks. I don't know what it is, something like that. Over on Patreon. Again, that link in the show description. $9.99 will get you all the picks. $19.99 a month will get you picks, not just the recommended picks, all the A grades, all the model insights, all the rankings from model, Discord chat, all sorts of goodies, more than you can shake a stick at for college football and college basketball.
It's right up there with Slobber Knocker. Everything you can shake a stick at. Yeah,
it's one of those shows, I guess. Because Jared, parting words before we head into week 13 for college football.
College basketball in full swing. So you're here for the college football stuff. Make sure you join us over on Patreon for all the college basketball picks. Literally more games than you know what to do with, more data than you know what to do with, totals, sides. I mean, just everything you could possibly want.
Well said. That's where we're heading to next, to go ahead and record that college basketball show here for Monday. We say it every so often here. We try to remind you at least every week about responsible betting. Make sure you are not chasing your losses, not betting on things that you don't actually have edges on. How do you find edges? One way is research, getting things from things like a good model. A lot of good ways to do that. But no matter what, folks, like we often like to say, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.